Breaking news, live analysis. A new explosive rumor is circulating on Russian and pro-Moscow networks. An alleged new weapon called Prizrak has supposedly surpassed the dreaded Oreshnik missile, allegedly sowing panic in Ukraine and reviving fears of a dramatic escalation on the military and geopolitical front.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clark Jackson, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas, even in these uncertain times when the world seems suspended between diplomacy and armed confrontation. Today, we delve into the heart of an explosive debate that has captivated online public opinion. A new Russian weapon called Prizrak has supposedly surpassed the Oreshnik missile, according to viral posts on YouTube and social media. Before separating fact from fiction, let's look at the essential points of this story that everyone is commenting on without independent evidence. Today, when we talk about the weapon Russia refers to as the Oreshnik, we're not talking about a gadget or a mere military toy. That would be a serious underestimation of what Moscow claims to have developed. A hypersonic ballistic missile that the Kremlin says is capable of changing the strategic dynamics in Europe. But what do we really know? And above all, what is based on confirmed facts and what is more a matter of communication tactics and political signaling? The answer to these questions is essential to understanding the potential impact, real or perceived, of the Oreshnik in the Ukrainian conflict and beyond. First, it is confirmed by military sources and field reports that the Oreshnik does indeed exist. It is an intermediate-range ballistic missile, an evolutionary development of the older Rs-26 Rubesh. According to available descriptions, this missile can fly at hypersonic speeds, that is, speeds exceeding Mach 10, and would be difficult to intercept with conventional missile defense systems. What many took away from it at one point was the fact that this missile was used for the first time in a real war zone in November 2024, targeting industrial facilities in the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. But here's where the analysis needs to be nuanced. This strike has not been confirmed as a massive or large-scale destructive attack. Some Western analyses suggest that the Oreshnik may not have carried conventional explosive warheads and that this launch was primarily symbolic and psychological, a message to adversaries and their allies rather than a demonstration of brutal tactical effectiveness. This leads us to a fundamental distinction. The Oreshnik cannot be reduced to just another ballistic missile, but neither can it be said to have been a game-changer in purely military terms. In fact, even Russian sources were slow to provide tangible evidence of the weapon's effectiveness, preferring to focus on its speed, theoretical range, and the difficulty Western systems would have in intercepting it. This missile is now at the heart of a major global debate. Is it a technological revolution or a strategic propaganda weapon? Can it truly reach targets thousands of kilometers away, penetrate missile defenses, and alter the balance of nuclear and conventional forces? Or is it simply another piece in Moscow's geopolitical chess game, used to exert psychological pressure on the West and Kyiv? We are far from having a definitive answer, but one thing is clear: the Oreshnik can no longer be ignored in strategic calculations, whether in terms of public perception or serious military analysis. When an unfamiliar name begins circulating in viral videos or on Telegram and Facebook accounts, we must immediately ask ourselves, is this a concrete military fact, or a piece of information being used for propaganda purposes? In the case of this mysterious Prizrak, which is presented as a Russian weapon supposedly capable of surpassing the Oreshnik, the answer lies precisely in this question. Currently, no major international source, neither Reuters, nor the Associated Press, nor any major Western media outlets, has reported the existence of such a weapon or confirmed that it actually surpasses known Russian hypersonic missiles. This term circulates almost exclusively in sensational YouTube videos or social media posts without any credible independent verification. What's happening with Prizrak is reminiscent of a dynamic already observed in other information warfare contexts. Spectacular narratives emerge, spread rapidly via social media platforms, and then become, for many, a perceived reality even before being verified by investigative journalists or neutral institutions. And this isn't the first time that such elements have transformed rumors into genuine viral phenomena, often detached from any solid documentation. Consider legends like the Ghost of Kyiv, which dominated timelines before being relegated to myths or popular war narratives due to a lack of tangible evidence. What is interesting, even worrying, is that the rumor of the Prizrak does not just exist. It is accompanied by sensational stories, claiming that it would literally blow up NATO's arsenal and freeze European defenses, as seen in some videos shared on Facebook and in alternative news channels. None of these accounts are corroborated by verifiable evidence from independent observers, recognized military analysts, or official Western sources. This does not mean the subject is not worth discussing, on the contrary, but it requires a rigorous level of skepticism to separate fact from fiction. In fact, the lack of evidence does not mean that Moscow is not working on new weapon systems. Russia has been developing hypersonic delivery systems like the Zircon and the Oreshnik for years, and these programs are occasionally announced by the Kremlin or Russian media outlets. However, a name that does not appear anywhere in respected military databases, Western analyst reports, or established press reports cannot be considered a confirmed weapon at this stage. This debate surrounding Prizrak nonetheless reveals a deeper reality. In a world where information is also a weapon, certain narratives emerge and spread faster than factual confirmations. And each time this happens, the door opens to interpretations, amplified fears, and a climate where perception can sometimes weigh as heavily as reality. When a viral headline proclaims that a new weapon surpasses anything the world has ever known, we are no longer dealing with conventional news. We are in the gray area of information warfare, where narratives are constructed to influence, polarize, and sometimes manipulate. This type of message is not innocuous. It is part of an invisible arsenal, yet one so powerful that it sometimes rivals physical weapons themselves. The digital age has transformed propaganda into a weapon of warfare with unprecedented reach and speed, capable of exploiting our fears, dividing entire societies, and provoking a crisis of confidence in reality itself. What distinguishes modern propaganda is its ability to exploit social media platforms like X, Telegram, Facebook, and YouTube, not only to disseminate sensational narratives but also to create alternative realities that seem plausible to millions of people. Narratives built around videos, fabricated testimonies, or sensational headlines no longer simply report information. They elicit raw emotions, fear, anger, shock, and compel audiences to share this content without ever verifying it. In the context of the war in Ukraine, these campaigns are not anecdotal. They are systematic and coordinated. Structures like the Internet Research Agency or state media outlets have demonstrated that they can deploy waves of disinformation calibrated to reach specific audiences, sometimes millions of people, with exaggerated or completely fabricated narratives. The consequences are profound. At a societal level, it instills distrust in traditional media, fragments public debate, and fosters polarization that extends far beyond the conflict itself. Intensive disinformation campaigns have even been documented, aimed at influencing elections or undermining social cohesion in democracies partnered with Ukraine. But this is not just a battle of opinions. It is a war where words become weapons, capable of changing perceptions, diverting attention from verifiable realities, and exacerbating already explosive tensions. Sometimes the narratives reinforce the fear of an omnipotent enemy. Sometimes they present catastrophic scenarios where nothing is as it seems, all without any independent evidence to support these claims. So what? When a rumor goes viral, when it's shared by thousands, then millions, how do we distinguish fact from noise? When fear fuels public discourse, where is the line between reality and mere psychological manipulation? In a world saturated with competing narratives, can we still trust what we read, see, or share? At the very moment when these explosive rumors about unverified weapons like the alleged Prizrak are spreading online, the West continues to bolster its unprecedented military support to Ukraine with deliveries of modern and sophisticated equipment, particularly in the areas of air defense systems, drones, and precision artillery. This development has not gone unnoticed in Moscow or by its media outlets. Disinformation narratives are now circulating to destabilize the Western perception of aid to Ukraine, attempting to influence not only public opinion but also political decisions at the highest levels. This kind of strategy is part of a broader logic of what is known as information warfare, a powerful tool that seeks to weaken the willingness of Kyiv's allies to continue their assistance and to sow doubt about the legitimacy or even the effectiveness of that aid. Here, narrative campaigns sometimes emerge in several languages, especially on social media, claiming that the West is engaged in a proxy war against Russia. They are often amplified without verifiable evidence, but their ability to influence is evident, particularly among audiences already skeptical of foreign military interventions. Why is this crucial now? Because we are in a period where the U.S. elections are on the horizon, and political discourse surrounding aid to Ukraine is becoming increasingly contested in Washington. Some elected officials and commentators are seeking to turn aid into an election issue, questioning budgetary priorities, border security, international commitments, and foreign policy in general. In this context, any sensational rumor or unconfirmed information, even if denied by reliable international sources, can be exploited to fuel an already existing political narrative, that the United States should refocus its efforts domestically rather than funding a distant war. In Europe, the situation is just as delicate. NATO, the European Union, and their members must juggle supporting Ukraine, protecting their own borders, and responding to public opinion growing weary after 3 years of war. Some voices in Europe, sometimes echoed in pro-Russian online campaigns, argue that continued escalation will be too costly, dividing citizens and weakening pro-Ukrainian governments. This pressure is precisely what disinformation campaigns seek to amplify. The timing is therefore strategic. In the midst of internal political discussions, economic uncertainties, and while diplomatic negotiations are progressing slowly but surely, these sensational rumors and narratives can be used as leverage to shift political balances, or even to influence funding or foreign policy decisions. This does not prove that they reflect the reality of Russian military capabilities, but it does show how the narrative itself has become a battleground. So what is really at stake? A battle for influence, a struggle to define the history of this conflict, and, potentially, the political outcome of critical weeks and months for the West and for Ukraine. When one seriously examines the Oreshnik and sensational claims like those emerging around the Prizrak, one must understand something fundamental. Modern weapons are not merely physical objects, they are also vectors of strategic messages. Every declaration, every launch, every public announcement can be interpreted not only as a military act, but also as an instrument of political communication, used to exert influence on the international stage, to send signals to adversaries, and even to sway entire public opinions. Take the example of the Oreshnik, this Russian-made intermediate-range ballistic missile, equipped with hypersonic capabilities and able to carry conventional or nuclear warheads, made its debut in a real war zone in November 2024 with a launch against the Ukrainian city of Dnipro. This use immediately triggered a wave of reactions in Western capitals and among military analysts, not only because a new weapon had been deployed, but because the narrative surrounding this launch clearly served a political purpose. Now, imagine this tool in a context where official sources are sometimes absent, contradictory, or limited in the details they share. In these areas of uncertainty, alternative narratives can develop, amplified sometimes by state media, sometimes by channels that align themselves with one side or the other, and often by social media accounts that seek to maximize emotional impact rather than accuracy. This is precisely where rumors like the Prizrak take root, in a fertile ground of uncertainty, anxious expectations, and a thirst for sensationalism. But the strategic reality is far more nuanced. Hypersonic aircraft like the Oreshnik do indeed present considerable technical and operational challenges. They travel at extreme speeds, sometimes mentioned as exceeding Mach 10, which complicates their interception by current defense systems. They can be designed to strike targets deep behind enemy lines, and their mere existence alters calculations of deterrence and defensive posture. However, several Western experts have pointed out that the technologies integrated into the Oreshnik are not radically new. They rely on architectures already existing in previous missiles, adapted to a different operational context. In the military field, this means that although this type of missile is strategically significant, it does not necessarily constitute a technological revolution in itself, but rather a combination of proven technologies repurposed for new strategic objectives. In other words, the urgent need is not simply to fear what is new, but to understand how these weapons are integrated into a broader discourse of deterrence, threat, and power projection. In a world where information circulates instantly and announcements can be amplified with a few clicks, it becomes essential to distinguish the genuine strategic message from amplified echoes without verifiable basis. So the real question that remains, and that must continue to haunt us, is not only, what is the capability of these weapons? But rather, what are the intentions behind their promotion, their concealment, or their exaggeration? We are living through a time when information about war is becoming synonymous with information warfare itself. When a weapon called Prizrak surfaces in sensational headlines, we must remain level-headed. To date, there is no independent confirmation, no verifiable report from major international news agencies. What we are seeing is a matter of perception and propaganda, not an established military fact. That said, in the current climate, even a rumor can influence strategies, public opinion, and political decisions in Washington, Brussels, or Kyiv.